Welcome to Mill History Talk, the podcast where we explore the past to better understand the profession of arms today. We dive into the campaigns, conflicts, issues, and commanders that have shaped military thinking across centuries, and why it all still matters. Whether you're an officer in training, a seasoned professional, a student of strategy, or simply curious about how history informs modern warfare, this space is for you. Our mission is simple: to foster insight, reflection, and critical thinking primarily through the lens of military history. Before we begin, a quick note. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the podcast writers, hosts, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or organization. So, whether you're listening in a barracks, a lecture hall, at the gym, or in your car on the way to work, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Hey everyone, I'm Hope, your slightly nerdy but very caffeinated guide through the wildest corners of military history. And today, we're wrapping up our series on the roots of modern armies. In the last episode, we traced the story from medieval levies to mercenary forces, and then to the smaller, professional armies of the 18th century. This episode introduces a whole new type of army, the Conscript army, and how it reshaped the world of war.
And I'm Brian, here to keep Hope from comparing Napoleon to reality TV stars. Today we're diving into the Levee en masse of 1793, the French Revolution's radical decision to draft the entire nation into war.
Picture France in 1793. They've just guillotined a king, half of Europe is sharpening bayonets at the border, and the new republic is like, all right, fine, everyone fights. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Men, women, kids, even grandma had a role.
That's right. The decree of August 23, 1793, made all unmarried men between 18 and 25 subject to military service. Married men forged weapons, women sewed uniforms, children rolled bandages. It was society mobilized as an army, a nation in arms.
And it worked. Within a year, France went from a modest royal army of about 150,000 to more than 750,000. By 1794, over 1 million French citizens were under arms. Napoleon would take that manpower and basically rewrite the rules of war.
So, now let's explore this idea of conscripts as volunteers.
That seems like a contradiction.
True, but follow me. In a monarchy, conscription is raw coercion. You serve because the king demands it. But in revolutionary France, the argument was different.
Exactly. Rousseau's social contract framed it this way. When the nation votes for a draft, you're not being forced by the state. You're compelling yourself because you're part of that collective decision.
So, in a strange way, a conscript in a democracy is indirectly a volunteer. Not individually, but collectively. You're fighting for the rights and freedoms you and your neighbors decided were worth defending.
It's like when your friends decide to go camping even though you wanted Netflix and pizza. You didn't volunteer, but there you are, swatting mosquitoes with everyone else.
The Levee en masse also tied conscription to nationalism. Soldiers weren't mercenaries. They were citoyens soldats, citizen soldiers. They fought not for pay but for liberty, equality, fraternity. That gave them a motivation aristocratic armies couldn't match.
And it's not just democracies. Even authoritarian regimes can motivate conscripts if they can link service to national survival. Think of the Soviet Union in World War II. Millions of conscripts fought with ferocity because they believed they were defending the motherland.
Exactly. And today, you can expect countries like China to field highly motivated conscript military forces that are willing to fight hard for their nation.
That's definitely something to think about.
Napoleon took this vast conscript force and pushed warfare into a new era. The biggest strength was scale. With hundreds of thousands of troops, Napoleon could fight multiple campaigns, absorb staggering losses, and keep pressing forward.
And the spirit mattered. These weren't soldiers for hire. They were citizens who saw themselves as defending France. That morale translated into endurance, long marches, hard battles, and a willingness to fight on even after heavy losses.
But conscription had drawbacks. Many recruits were barely trained, and they rotated in and out quickly. Napoleon relied on a professional backbone of officers and veterans to hold things together. Without that cadre, raw conscripts could crumble.
And because manpower was cheap, Napoleon could be reckless. The 1812 invasion of Russia is a case in point. Hundreds of thousands marched in, but only a fraction returned. A professional force might have been more cautious, but Napoleon's system allowed him to gamble lives on a massive scale.
So, the conscript army was powerful, but also fragile. When well led, it could steamroll Europe. When stretched thin, its weaknesses, poor training, shaky discipline, became glaring.
Okay, let's fast forward to today. The U.S. military calls itself an all-volunteer force. But Brian, is that really accurate?
Technically, yes, but practically it's more complicated. U.S. troops enlist for pay benefits and career opportunities. That's very different from revolutionary France, where service was framed as a universal civic duty. Critics argue that today's force is more professional than volunteer, closer to a paid guild of warriors than a citizen army.
So in a twist, the revolutionary conscript, who got almost no pay, might actually be more of a volunteer than the modern U.S. private who signs up for college tuition. History always flips the script. Again, something to think about.
Conscription has not gone away in contemporary military organizations. Israel still drafts both men and women. South Korea and Taiwan do the same. In Europe, Sweden, Lithuania, and Norway have reinstated conscription since Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
And then there's Switzerland. They haven't fought a war in 150 years, but they still require young men to serve. Basically, we're neutral, but we're armed neutral.
Meanwhile, China also uses conscription laws, even though in practice they get plenty of volunteers. The principle is the same. The army is seen as inseparable from the people. So, to sum it up, the Levee en masse gave birth to the citizen soldier. Napoleon proved that mass conscription could dominate the battlefield, but it came with serious trade-offs. And the story didn't end there. The conscript army dominated Europe under Napoleon, and it still exists in many countries today. But the professional army never disappeared. At Waterloo in 1815, Napoleon's conscripts faced off against Britain's redcoats, disciplined professionals.
Which means that every modern army, even now, falls into one of two categories: professional or conscript. The exact form depends on each country's history and security needs, but broadly, those are the two types.
And for today's military professionals, that distinction matters. You need to know the strengths and weaknesses of both types, and just as importantly, recognize which kind of force you belong to, and in war, which kind of force you're facing.
And that's a wrap on today's march through history, and on our series on the roots of modern armies. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been Mil History Talk. If you had fun, hit follow, share it with a friend, or drop Levee en masse into your next dinner conversation. Instant intellectual points.
Until next time, keep your strategy sharp, your humor sharper, and remember, wars may be fought by men, but they're won by logistics, and sometimes by entire nations in arms.